Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Vision Pros Live. I'm your show host, Jackson Calhoun, founder of First Class Business. And I've got Greg Kaiser in the house of Management Mastery. He's got a book on management and leadership. He's got a great personality. We have no problem going back and forth with healthy conflict. And that's one of my favorite realities. And I've got a leader who's willing to go in and dive deep on, well, I don't know about that. Well, what about this angle? And he goes, well, I don't know about that, Jackson. What about this angle? That's one of my favorite styles of conversations because it's obviously diving into both of our blind spots. And I don't think there's a more healthy place that we can be on a weekly basis. Maybe not every moment of every day, but I like to be there often because I'm trying to lead millions of people and I won't get there unless I'm able to see past my own blind spots. So Greg Kaiser, thank you for being a great guest. Thank you for being a great mastermind buddy through email. We got our pen pal stuff going, and thanks for joining me live to talk about hidden communication gaps that break great teams.
Jackson, thank you so much. A pleasure to be here. Really looking forward to having another, let's call it vibrant or possibly vigorous conversation.
Yeah, very good. Good second word choice too. That's what I felt. And sometimes, my friends, sometimes when I get these emails from Greg, my inner ego comes out and is like, really? And I'm like, wait, no, he gets it. He's not gonna run from this. We're gonna talk. All right. And I'll put my email back and I'll be like, okay, Jackson, channel your inner love, bring up the radical candor. And I think so many people hear that book and they've never read it or looked at it, and they think radical candor means like extreme, hard bearing truth. That's not what it is, my friends. Radical candor is you love somebody enough to recommend change. That's what it's about. And that's what I've gone back and forth with Greg looking at, all right, what changes can I possibly help Greg with, not inflict on Greg. And when he returns back, I'm like, cool. I see that he's doing the same thing. So again, you got a special aspect of leadership, Greg, that you don't have to give. You didn't have to go through our wrestling matches through email, but you chose to. And I want to thank you for that. Where did you learn that?
Jackson, I'm an honors graduate from the College of Hard Knocks. Many people have never heard of this school.
Yeah.
I'm a self-proclaimed, hopefully I can back that up, lifetime learner.
Yeah.
And the way you learn how to do things is through repetition and trial. But then the flip side of it is you have to be humble enough or have enough humility to step back and say, oh boy, that didn't work the way I thought. Yeah. Instead of saying, oh, these people, they don't get it. Like, no, you didn't give it to them. So go back, rethink your approach a little bit and help them. Yes. And that's an iterative process.
Yes, it is. That's already a masterclass. We're going to wrap up today and just close this episode. No, my friends, seriously, have your pen and paper ready, because I can tell from what Greg already said and from my own life, I'm going to speak for both of us. We have both been through the good, the bad, and the ugly of leadership. And everything that we talk about today, we're going to be revealing some secrets that took me years to learn, that if I had just had somebody help me see these matters, my relationships would have improved drastically. My companies would have scaled far faster with far better culture. And ultimately, I would probably be leading millions of people by now because of the people that I was working with. But I had to learn some very hard lessons as a young visionary that didn't quite understand how to pull these aspects together. So we're gonna try to nail down the one major communication gap after we talk about several of them. But we're also going to dive into some communication gaps that you can fix right now. Greg, let's dive into the first aspect of that before we take a little break. Communication gaps that quietly grow between leaders, managers, and team members. And we're going to talk about both in-person workforces and environments and online remote workforces, because they're very, very different in my opinion. I've had how many years now? 16 years working from home. And I can tell you there's a lot of good, bad, and ugly to remote workforces. But Greg, let's start with yours. Back to it one more time. What are the communication gaps that quietly erode or grow between leaders, managers, and teams?
Yeah, so I think about this. I like to put things into structures, frameworks, whatever word you want to use.
Mhm.
And so the first thing they miss is, are we actually communicating? And the communication is exchange of valuable information as differentiated from, say, chit chat. When you and I email back and forth, it's fairly intense. There's some weighty things in there, and you're like, okay, that's information. I'm going to go buy this book that he suggested. I'm going to listen to this on Audible, et cetera, et cetera. That's information. And then the other thing people miss, and this is so basic, what direction is the communication flowing? Are you listening?
Interesting.
Or are you actually sending the communication out? Because, and this is the thing I try to help people understand, the initiator of a communication owns the communication from that point forward. And they have to feel that, okay, I initiated this communication and I did it presumably for some purpose. I now own where this goes. Because, and you've probably experienced this, Jackson.
Do me a favor on this, Greg. I feel like I'm in a pool and I tried to reach the bottom and I didn't reach it, but I'm like, oh, I want to. Help me see the example, because what you said, I can feel the depth, but I couldn't quite capture it in a real life scenario. So what does that look like? The initiator and the responsibility.
So the initiator, put it in a simple, you're in a remote work situation, since you brought that up. And I personally experienced this. People would talk in generalities on, we were using Microsoft Teams, and I'd say, okay, hang on. Subject, verb, object. Break this down, structure that so the people that are on here know who you're talking to, what you're talking about, and then the object, what you want to happen. Because, I'm fortunate. I get to observe these things fly on the wall.
Yeah.
Until I learn how these people interact, then I start inserting myself and say, okay, this might be helpful. And I do this offline, Jackson. I don't do this on the calls.
Yeah.
I call them afterwards and okay, I have a transcript of the meeting. Let's go over how you explained this. You directed this to somebody in Germany. And I took German for 5 years. The language structure in German is different. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand that verbs are super important in German. Sentences hinge around verbs. So you have to make sure you're not using some American idiom that they don't understand, because they're going to be embarrassed to stop you in the middle of a meeting with a bunch of other people on the call. So confirm, after you say something, confirm that they understood. This is the action that we need to flow out of this. Is everybody on the same page? And then you let them repeat it back to you. And you might have to prompt them a little bit. You don't have to prompt them a little bit to get them to do that. But once they repeat it back to you, then you can very, very quickly say, I didn't exactly get across what I wanted to, or like, okay, nailed it. Good. Let's move on to the next thing. And this is harder in a remote environment because people don't always pay attention as much as they should.
Right. And especially if you allow videos to be off, but you can't see somebody's hands on their lap going like this. You can't see the leg bouncing.
No, but what you see is this. They're looking under. They're looking under the table. I worked with a great guy. It was about $1 billion company. Wouldn't let a meeting start until everybody's cameras were on, and he was nice about it and kind of jokey about it. And he's like, "Oh, I see you just got out of bed and you're still in your robe and whatever." Mm-hmm. He only had to do it a couple of times. People showed up ready to play. Yeah, they knew they were going to be on camera, and he tiled the screen. And he would it was like sitting in a meeting room. He would randomly go around and say, "So, John, what do you think? Hey, are you guys getting this?" And he'd point to somebody, say their name. So all of a sudden, when somebody says your name, you snap to it. Yeah. He was so good at it, but he was a natural. Because I talked to him afterwards. I'm like, "How did you get that good at that?" He's like, "Well, I worked for Boston Consulting Group for 10 years. He's like, we're really good at making sure people are paying attention because they have to pay attention to what we say. I'm like, okay, so you've been practicing this for 10 years. Like, you didn't do this yesterday.
Right. Exactly. So there's that combination of a natural with natural plus 10 years of extreme exercise. Right. So that's good. That's really good. And I like that you talked about the repeat it back. Greg, you said you went to the Hard Knocks University. It feels a little bit like you went to the Oxford University as well. Subject, verb, and object, and confirm action, repeat it back. I'm going to put that into what I would consider layman terms for us sports guys. I once had a therapist who helped me realize just how bad communication between human beings are, and he had a little bitty game that he played called pass the ball. And so when you pass the ball, when you're speaking, you got the ball. So we do this virtually in our companies where, okay, I've got the ball, here's what I'm saying, subject, verb, and object, right? Here's the challenge, here's what we're going to do about it, and here's what we want the outcome to be, right, using Greg's formula. When I finish that, I'm going to give the ball to a team member, and I'm going to say, now it's your turn to tell me, what did I say? Yes. And so they have the ball and they speak back, and they usually say something completely different than what I said. And now they give me the ball back, and now I say, okay, that's what you heard. This is what I meant. And then you might have to do this 5 or 6 times in my marriage counseling session. I think we did it 15 the first time. And I was like, whoa, we're using the same words, but meaning completely different things. Say that again.
Slow learner?
Oh man, of course. Slow and intense, both, absolutely. Yeah. So that aspect alone, that's a very big one. Let's dive a little bit deeper, Greg. What's we're into another area of communication gaps that quality grow. I'll lead on this one. You can color commentate. In remote workforces, my friends, I wish remote companies would lean into exactly what I say here. This was a very hard-earned lesson. There's almost no culture in remote work environments because people, they don't want to be on meetings. 2, the meeting feels kind of static because people don't know how to lead remote meetings very well. And so even if you're best friends, and we were in my first, one of my first startups, we lived all down the street from each other, but we wouldn't see each other but once a year when we go to a trade show. And we were just busy. We're working. We all had our own responsibilities to do. And so our Zoom calls after that first year, like we get to the trade show conference and we're like, oh my gosh, I do still love you. I don't hate you. And we, year 2 coming up on the same thing, but with far more like, I don't know if I still love you. And by year 3, man, we freaking hated each other. We were all really mad at each other. And so I went into video power marketing after that a couple years later, and we were remote culture again. And I thought through the nasty experiences that Adam and Don and Jen and I went through at Restaurant Connect. And I said, you know what? We just got to a point where every day was, Greg, did you get it done? Okay, good. You got it done? All right. You didn't get it done? Oh man, you didn't, like, why don't you get it done? And then it just became a transactional relationship where everything we were doing was so focused on, all right, let's get out of this meeting because nobody wants to be here anyway. Like, let's go and let's get it done. Let's get it done. And there was no depth. There was no moment where, you know what? Somebody yelled at me on the phone and the guy in the cubicle next to me goes, whoa, man, like that was harsh. Like, way to take it. And that builds a sense of belonging. That builds a sense of good feeling that you've got each other's back in moments. Even if it's worse being in that cubicle, there's something that happens with the values, the virtues. So now let's go to what we did at Video Power. At Video Power, we would take time to talk about the good things in life. We wouldn't just rush off the Zoom because everybody hates Zoom meetings. No, they don't. People hate Zoom meetings because they get static and focused on transaction. And 2, we decided that every time that we had a conference, we would bring everybody to the speaking session. Everybody would come there for that 3-day weekend. We would have one day where we were doing a seminar where everybody prepared their own little stuff to talk about what we were going to move forward. And the next day, we would all spend time together doing something in the city that we were in, like an activity. We rode the roller coaster in Vegas, and went to the Mob Museum and hung out there too. And then the last day, Jake and I would go into the conference and crush the conference, and the team had the freedom to do whatever the heck they wanted. If they wanted to spend time together, awesome. If they wanted to go do their own thing, it was awesome. But we made sure that quarterly we were doing things to bring the group together. And if we couldn't do it in person, we would do it virtually. We would do something fun virtually together.
Yeah.
If companies would fix that, they wouldn't get to a position where people were quiet quitting and checking out and not paying attention to Zoom meetings and feeling like there's no relationship, because you're actively building a relationship. That can help cure a lot of the communication gaps that we struggle with desperately at Restaurant Connect. Greg, your turn.
I want to go back and touch on one thing you said, where you talked about culture, and then you gave some excellent examples, physical examples, like people listening to you can picture it, like, oh, I can see that happening. I can see that happening. And this is where culture is. Now I'm going to go half theoretical on you. It's the cumulative result of observed actions. So in your first startup where you ended up not liking everybody, people observed the actions. You may have had a mission statement and a vision somewhere and all those things, and these are our corporate values. Okay, those are nice.
We messed that up too.
Watching what you do. And they're like, you know, they said these things and they sound really good, you know, mom, apple pie, all that kind of thing. And then the behavior doesn't match. That's the people might listen to what you say, but they've really watched what you do. That's where culture comes from. And that's how people know how to behave without being told. It was like, hey, we built this culture where we trust each other to take a set of actions consistently. That's a culture. Culture is not the thing that's hanging in the lobby of your corporate headquarters that you probably overpaid somebody to put together for you that nobody ever read. That's like, man, that's not getting the people together. The example that you gave, everybody remembers that. They walk away and like, we were together. We felt good. We talked about the good things. They remember that. Quiz them. Hey, what are our corporate values? I don't know. Like maybe the
Well, to your point on that. To your point on that, some people mess it up and only put it on a poster, and some people mess it up and haphazardly create their culture. And I would say Restaurant Connect, we did that. I mean, we were able to grow to 36,000 recurring monthly revenues after 3 years, but man, it sucked the way we did it. And it was hard, and it could have been so much easier. Our culture was built around a mutual understanding that we were pretty relentless and we were super dedicated to hospitality at an extreme level. And so it allowed us to move forward because at the end of the day, we're all good people with integrity. And so that helped too. At Video Power, our culture was developed. I mean, we were pretty much, I don't want to say bro marketers. We were a little bit better than that, but we were young guys who understood the value of work-life balance and family above all else. And I came in and I set a tone that, number one, Jake's role, he needs to be golfing as much as possible with executives. That's where he wins his deals. And everybody knew that kind of resonated for all of us. And so it was an unspoken reality that we could all do something like that. Two, he needed to be speaking on as many stages as possible and podcasts as possible. And so we knew the importance of gaining authority, gaining awareness, getting out there on stage. And three, he needs to be playing the jazz piano at those events because that's where people fall in love with Jake. And again, we were all fairly talented in different aspects similar to that. And so we understood how to embrace those realities. And lastly, I said, guys, and as long as we get our work done, we have unlimited vacation days and you can work whenever you want. And so that kind of on accident set a cultural tone that was super helpful. And I would add that at Restaurant Connect, at First Class Business, we do have a poster culture, right? Something that I learned after was like, wait, we could have done even better back then had we really intentionally paid our dues with figuring out, well, how do cultures work together at scale? And I'm a huge fan of Patrick Lencioni and his 5 dysfunctions of a team. One of the posters we follow is about his low performance teams versus high performance teams. And then another one that we follow is our own cultural values of love, patience, persistence, consistency, and reliability. And it's my job as a team leader to check in with people, not to do the random like, hey, do you know our core 5 values? and just make it about the memorization. But it was Chris Whitehood of the Iconic podcast. Man, that guy's an awesome leader as well. And I was talking to him about core values, and I said, how do you inspire a team to be accountable to like the workforce and for what they're doing? And he said just hold them accountable to the core values. And if you see them doing something outside of the core values, and talk to them about like, hey, that wasn't, in your case, Jack, that wasn't very loving. Can we talk about that? And have a conversation about how we can handle things through the means of that core value and everything. I was like, whoa, dude, like you just simplified everything for me. Now all I have to do is go back to, oh, you know what? That wasn't a consistent action. Can we talk about that and why consistency is important? So that's been really, really helpful for bridging our communication gaps and also making sure that I don't then freak out on people. It's like, okay, Jackson, you're freaking out. Where's the love in what you're doing? And I can be like,
That's the inconsistency part.
right. Yes, sir. So go ahead, Greg. Continue.
No, so I'm borrowing ideas as you talk, Jackson. So the thing you did, possibly without thinking about it, because you do it all the time, you drew this beautiful compare and contrast picture. Organization 1, we became very transactional. Why didn't you get this done? When's it going to be done? Blah, blah, blah. Organization 2, hey, you need to be playing a jazz piano and you can golf as much as you want. That's not hard for people to grasp. And then they see you following through on it. You're at a conference somewhere and this guy is actually playing the jazz piano. They're like, no, he was serious when he said that. He meant it. Versus the first one,
Correct.
You didn't have anything to compare the highly transactional nature of the way that organization operated to something better. And people, what's the word I'm looking for? They feel it, like they just intuitively feel it, like, oh yeah, I get, compare and contrast is sort of analytical language. You want them to feel it. Organization 1, this. Organization 2, this. Got it. Now, you want to bring somebody in and talk about compare and contrast? It might be helpful. When they say the 2 words, got it, that's a hell of a lot better than compare and contrast.
Absolutely. My friends, we're going to come back in. One of the greatest challenges for visionaries in the early stages is you guys, just like I did, thought, well, let's just follow what the business world is doing. And the business world is made up of 96% of companies failing within 10 years. So I don't tend to follow a path where 96% of people are going to fail. I decide, you know what, let's find a new way to do things, Mark Twain style. We're going to talk about how expectations are one of the things that absolutely cripples and crushes brands. And when you got a world focused on quarterly expectations, like no wonder businesses are doing so poorly. We can do better than that. We'll be back. We'll talk about it with Greg. All right. Welcome in to Vision Pros Live with Jackson Calhoun. I'm your show host. We will be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there. Hey, what's up? Welcome into Vision Pros Live. I'm your show host, Jackson Calhoun, founder and CEO of First Class Business, and I've got Greg Kaiser here with me today. I don't know whether to call this episode a mastermind session or a mentorship session. Greg's doing an excellent job of mentoring me as we go. I've already learned so much in the last 23 minutes of just exploring what my path has looked like, seeing that journal, but also hearing him talk through and help me to pick like, wow, these are other things that we can learn on top of this. And I'm like, ooh, that's a good point. I need to talk to my team about that. So there's a lot that we're going to gain. We're going to talk about expectations next and several other aspects of leadership that can help you lead your vision with precision, grace, and grow it as well as possible. I mean, this is about establishing a legacy, my friends. Before we do that, I always want to give a couple of extra value points. One is journeytowellnessplan.com. Dr. Shannon and Dr. Justin Pierce. My hope is that today this message is catch somebody who's been struggling with some element of health that they don't know how to resolve. Dr. Shannon is somebody that has helped 3 of my friends and family members. I've known them for 8 years, and I follow up with people when I send people a certain direction. And I asked all 3 of them later how it went with Shannon. All 3 of them raved about how she was able to help them with things that other doctors were not able to. And so that's one of those special care points for me. If you know somebody in your life that is suffering, you have an opportunity to step up and make an introduction and let them take it from there. Again, thank you, Shannon, for all that you've done for my friends and family. Then there's Practice Makes Permanent with Jennifer Reed. Jennifer Reed specializes in emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence and helping facilitate that in corporate workplaces. That was something that I hadn't heard about before, as integrating SQ or spiritual intelligence into a workplace. I thought, well, that's kind of taboo. That's something that I could see a lot of people being resistant to. Well, that's my fear of the unknown talking. That's not a progressive individual thinking, how might this benefit my workforce? She's also worked in government agencies for more than 20 years, including the IRS. And if I think about cultures that could be difficult to shift perspective and bring great culture in, she's been training, in my opinion, in one of the hardest places there is in relation to leadership and helping people develop. So the big reason though why I would talk to Jennifer, and when you're looking at hiring leadership experts, cultural developers, I would recommend asking them, what is the reason? Like, why do they care? What is it that they do this for? Some people will give you the transactional answer of, oh, well, it's because I studied under blah, blah, blah. No, that if they answer that way, just thank them for their time, ask them to send you info and move on. If their story ultimately inspires you, then that's somebody that you should consider, because they have a personal reason for wanting to do this. I will challenge you, or actually warn you, have a box of Kleenexes with you when you ask Jennifer Reed, why does she do what she does? You will see an absolute champion of EQ and SQ, and somebody who can help take your culture to the next level. And if you don't know this, taking culture to the next level is one of the greatest financial impacts for good that you can have on your company, because when people show up to work and they actually want to be there, well, it's amazing how much better they take care of the people that you're striving to take care of. So let's move on to the water project. The water project is something that's near and dear to my heart at this point. I've got an empty glass here, but I only have to walk like 4 steps to get access to water. I've never been thirsty in my life. These people in Africa, there are millions who do not have access to clean drinking water. Their kids have to leave school to go get water for their school. These people have to leave work sometimes to go find water, and they don't know where they're going to find it. And when I found out about that, I had to meditate on it a bit. I was like, golly, that's rough. And I love that the Water Project allows you to choose a specific community. And if you give $10 to $20 to that project, they will actually include you ultimately as kind of an investor, aware of what happens to that project. You get to see it come to fruition. You get to find out if they're building a sand dam or a borehole well, things I had never heard of in my life before. And I was like, how neat and transparent is this? I see these kids celebrating water like my kids celebrate Christmas Day. And I realize that we have a very, very cool way to impact the world in a meaningful way, by doing so little. So as long as I'm going to rock this microphone, I'm going to do it to do what I can to help the 8 billion people out there. And so my other request from you is, if you have a cause that inspires you, drop it in the comments. Let us know about the cause. I will personally take a look at it and see what I can do to help out. I might even talk about it here on the show, but I'll definitely talk about it with 1 or 2 of my guests, and see what's possible to make things happen for others. And without further ado, we'll go back to helping every single one of you with building out your visions. And this is one of the most important sacred topics. It's why we talk about it all the time, is how much better can we become at leadership, because we can create a clear vision, a great culture, and an awesome set of leaders surrounding us. Then we have something amazing that we can now market, and our vision can take off and we can scale it really well. So Greg, welcome back to Vision Pros Live.
Jackson, even your sponsorship section is completely consistent. So you're going through, well, we got to talk about EQ, emotional intelligence, and people in the room start squirming. Like, can't we just go back to talk about the numbers?
Right. Or blue collar.
Yeah, I'm much more comfortable talking about the numbers.
Enough of this emotion stuff.
Yeah. Like, I'm a businessman. This is what I do. I want to talk about EPS. No, there's a way to get there.
Yeah.
But then the other one, because you mentioned it earlier and then you came back to it in that section, is this idea of mentoring. And this is, frequently you hear people say, well, I never had a mentor, which is sad.
Yeah.
Because the way I try to explain it to people is, coaching is technical.
Yeah.
Here's how you do this technical thing. Here's how we put together our marketing campaigns, and it has these activities and components, mentoring is about perspective. Well, I've seen 100 marketing campaigns, and I can help you differentiate the reasons why some worked and some didn't. And it broadens the perspective of the person being mentored. That, like, hey, this is the big picture. Here's how your part fits in the big picture. Because marketing campaigns are great, but then somebody has to actually go sell somebody, and then your accounts receivable department has to track down those invoices, make sure you get paid, and blah, 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 all that stuff. A mentor can help you see that big picture, that when you're down mired in the technical side, that's really hard to pull yourself back up and say, oh, wait, I'm part of this big integrated system. And it's the integration part that the mentors can really, really help with.
Yes.
And I was lucky. I had a really good mentor early in my career. And I didn't know what the guy was doing at first.
Mm-hmm.
Every week he's like, hey, when you get a minute, stop by. I'm like, why? Because I'm at the highly transactional level. I'd come in, he'd put his feet up on his desk. Hey, what are you working on? And then he would go through it and it's like, oh, well, do you understand what happens when you get done doing what you do? No. He's like, well, let me take a minute to explain this. It probably took 4 or 5 weeks or meetings with this guy before I started actually asking him questions. And then he really hit his stride. He's like, oh, I'm so happy you're interested in that. He's like, that tells me that you're thinking ahead a little bit. Now let me help build that up a little bit. This is why you need to think ahead. And he was such a nice guy. Like, he never made me feel like, because he was a VP and I was entry-level person, why in God's name this guy ever decided he was going to spend time with me? God bless him. But he did. And that, because then I went back later and I'm like, I could do that for other people. Now, you can't do it when you're in your second or third year of working experience. You simply lack that broad perspective.
I'll challenge that 1,000%.
Okay,
1,000% challenge that. 100%. My daughter is, well, let's just go with my youngest daughter. She's 5 years old. She's got 5 years of perspective I don't have in life. I happen to have 38 years of perspective that she doesn't have in life. Or my teenage daughter. She's got the same thing. She's got 14 years on me that I don't have. And so I can learn from everybody and anybody. It's up to me to choose who I learn from. And so the mentorship opportunities that exist, I don't think it's wise for us to put limits on who can and who can't, because all 8 billion people on this planet have something that we can learn from. And even from a mentorship role, if I want to know more about makeup and hair, I'll go to my daughter. She's got me beat in that category. And so so I want to appreciate what you said, that it's certainly very, very helpful for us to make sure that we honor those who have the greater experience, that have more experience in life. But can we also make sure to completely maximize the opportunities to learn from those who have less experience too? Amazon does this well. So with Amazon, I learned that Jeff Bezos, when they run their meetings, Greg, they have the person who's newest to the company speak first.
Yep.
And the reason why they do that is because that person won't speak if everybody else has already spoken. And so they start with that person. That person's also the least tainted, and the person who has less understanding of the bureaucracy challenges that exist in the company. So they'll say things nobody else would dare to say. And that expands everybody's horizon to be able to be more open to new ideas. So continue though.
Well, let me do what we do, Jackson. Let me push back.
Yeah, of course.
How did you get to age 38 by skipping your first 5 years of life? You said you don't have that perspective. At one time,
I don't have her perspective.
No, that's a context.
I don't have her perspective.
That's a context. The context is the way you understand the situation you're in. So a 5-year-old's context for the world is very different than yours, because you got 38 years of really hard experience. You've forgotten what it's like to be 5 years old.
Not at all, Greg. In fact, that's another opportunity that I was going to talk about. If you guys, and this, I was going to make a dark joke about it. If you guys want your kids to understand what the importance of a mentor is, you could follow my dad's example. Just leave when your child's 4.
Yeah.
That opens your horizon up to realize, so no, I have my first sales experience. I was 3 years old. I ran into my parents' bedroom because they were screaming. I jumped across the bed, pushed them apart, and as peaceful of a loud voice as I could, I said, "Stop." I was selling peace from my home. And as a kid, you with a dad who's an alcoholic, you could end up very, very hurt in that situation. But something about me, I had some type of alpha experience within me to understand that that was my role. That's what I needed to do. And I spent the rest of my life selling peace in different homes that I spent a lot of time in. And so I've got, thanks to my dad, over 100 dads, in my life that helped me figure things out here and there. And so I wouldn't say that it's a lost perspective as much as it's an abundance of appreciation for the reality that my 5 years in America, for instance, was very different than my friends' 5 years that live in Ecuador, or
Yep.
that live in Colombia, or that lived in the house across the street that seemed exactly like ours, but probably wasn't even close. So there's still an opportunity there to realize that what I have is not reflected as a lack just because I appreciate the angle that somebody else comes from.
Well, and that I would go back to your example of,
Mhm.
was it Bezos, Amazon, where they
Yeah.
get the person who has the least experience to talk first. So I
Yeah.
can't remember the name of the author, but there's a book out there called The Ministry of Common Sense. Fabulous book, and it touches on that. You can't let people be in an organization for so long that the things that are not working well are no longer obvious to them, because when you get to a high enough level, nobody's going to tell you, hey, I don't want to bother you with this little thing. They have to encourage them to bother them with that little thing. Like,
Mhm.
I'm so far above that, and I'm thinking about the next acquisition our company's going to make and this and that. And like, well, no, wait, the companies we already own are not doing this well. Because of where they sit, they just can't see it anymore. So
Yeah.
their
100%.
perspective is
I love
different.
that.
And you and I won't agree on the context thing, but that's okay.
Sure, that is okay. But I love what you're saying, because one of my team members that's newer has forced me to open my eyes, pretty much forced me to open my eyes in ways that I wouldn't in the past. I would sell past it. And what I mean by that is I would justify some of where our business was struggling in order to focus on other areas. But this person kind of put a hard stop and was like, no, everybody who sees this is going to be embarrassed about our company. You've got to fix it. And so now we've got a new quote, because they beat into my head over 3 months of me being slow and stubborn and accepting it. But then I was finally like, holy crap, okay, new quote for the company: no more half-baked projects. We've got to finish things and get to the end. So let's
I
go
like
back
that.
to expectations
Yes.
on this, because expectations are also part of what probably drove that reality. But we've also got to be careful, my friends, to put expectations in check. Um, Expectations, and as we wrote in the description for those of you here, this is exact. I want to make sure we fulfill on those realities. Talked about how when they aren't clear, strategy gets lost, expectations and frustration spreads the organization. Well, I would also counter our own description. Expectations also lead to strategy getting overbearing, execution slowing down because people are frustrated and they start to quit. And that frustration spreads across the organization, a huge storm, because as Shakespeare said, expectation is the root of all heartache. Expectations, my friends, is one of the greatest vices in the world, one of the greatest invisible vices. It is if we look for a synonym of what I expect to happen, I have a sense of entitlement with that. And the entitled generation, that is generation millennial, mine, and generation Z, etc. There's a need to defend what we want and have, but there's an obsession that occurs when we decide that I should have this. This is something that's deservedly mine. The virtue that mirrors that's almost never talked about anymore is an old word called aspiration. And aspiration means I can still want and care for things to move forward. I can still be intentional about moving it, but I'm no longer going to allow my disappointments to dominate my attitude and my character when my team is struggling to bring said aspiration to fruition. I can now still receive what I have with grace, while also still being intent with I'm still going to accomplish my goals. So Greg, I went a little bit deep there. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Expectations, aspirations, and how do we help our team members not get to this boiling point of frustration?
Yeah. So, and you touched on all the things. So aspirations live up at the strategy level. This is how we will be competitive. This is how we'll win in the marketplace. Well, that's aspirational until you set expectations and people go out and do the things that are consistent with that aspiration. So if you can keep coming back to that, it's like, hey, this is who we want to be. It's becoming. We're going to become this. We're not this yet, but we're going to become this. Here's how we become this thing. And there's certain behaviors that are consistent with becoming that thing. And people tend to miss that because if you say aspirational, the connotation of that word is we might get there, we might not. If you take it back to expectation and allow me to add a qualifier to it, it has to be a realistic expectation. Realistically, I will never play in the NBA. I'm 6 feet tall and I'm now kind of old. That's not a realistic expectation. It's a realistic expectation for me to go play pickup basketball somewhere. Okay. But you have to help people with that. So going back to the communication part, people have to understand what you're communicating about, the details. But then more importantly, once everybody's on the same page, right? They get this realistic view. They have to leave and go back to their day job with an understanding of the actions that they'll take based on what they've now agreed to. That's very different than this is where we want to be aspirationally to know, like, there are certain things I have to do when I get back to my desk or wherever it is they work, table, whatever. That's really different and it's hard to do.
Yeah.
Because it's a real blast to stay up at the aspirational level.
Well, there's an interesting opportunity there. I'm a big fan of the movie with Ryan Reynolds, Chaos Theory. And he's this like smart goal nut who's all about time management until his life absolutely falls apart. And he then starts to understand the value. It's a rom-com. It's again pretty off the walls, but he going back to the aspirational and the realism aspect, I'm a big fan of both SMART goals and BHAGs. Right. And so you guys can all look those up. BHAGs being the big, hairy, audacious goals that don't make sense to anybody. We wouldn't be flying across the world in tin cans called airplanes, right? If somebody hadn't created a goal that was absolutely stupid. And so the BHAGs, they're very important. While again, I agree that the SMART goals are also important, I still think expectation is a hidden poison. And that if we're going to lean into something similar to it, let's go back to the word hope, a word that we've also destroyed. People used to say hope was a good thing. Nowadays, if you say, well, I hope it happens, somebody goes, what do you mean?
It happen.
Or they say, I hope he doesn't screw that up. Right. We use that word that used to be a virtue in a way that ultimately degrades a situation. And so we have an opportunity to lean back in and find out, well, what the heck did hope actually mean? What is it supposed to mean to us? And hope is meant to mean like we have a secure belief that something is going to take place. It is not I don't think this is going to happen. And so let me fear and worry and say, well, I'm just going to give up before I even try. So there's opportunities with that. Greg, I want to give you a chance to talk about your proven framework as well. And so we've got the opportunity to talk about this innovative managed framework that builds consistency across teams without sacrificing flexibility. Practical communication systems that eliminate confusion and frustration at work and translate strategy into action across every level of the organization, which often doesn't happen with strategy, and turning these businesses into clear execution across the teams. This proven framework will help us have more consistent leadership, which is definitely something that I need and that my team would benefit from always. How do we get more and more consistent what we do? So Greg, let's hear about the proven framework.
Well, and this is the fascinating thing, because I call this thing the management framework. Management is not as hot a topic as leadership. I want to be a leader.
Correct.
Well, okay, you don't self-proclaim that. You have to go do things. So I put this management framework together. I won't bore you with all the Venn diagrams and everything. The management framework it's on there somewhere, Jackson. I don't know where. It's a circle that has 5 components and sitting up. So think of it as a clock face. Up at 12 o'clock, you have planning. This whole management framework sits a lower level than strategy. Strategy gets delivered to a management team, and then the management team says, okay, I need to go off and build plans. That's up at 12 o'clock. Then you move around to 3 o'clock on the clock face, and you have people. When I have a plan, then I can start to understand what people resources I need to execute the plan. Then you come down to the bottom, or at 6 p.m. on the clock, directing. People need to know what to do. Like the first company you described, it sounds like you spent a lot of time directing. It was transactional. Do this, do that, do this, do that. Then you come around to 9 o'clock or 9 p.m. on the clock face where you have measuring and modifying. Well, how did that work? We should probably talk about that. Like, how did this work out? But anchoring this whole framework is the thing we were talking about today, Jackson. It's communication. That is how you integrate or tie together. I like to use the word synthesize, but somebody told me that word's kind of a turnoff, so I'll use integrate. How do you integrate all of those things? How do you integrate people and planning and directing and improving results? You do it by communicating with people. You don't assume, well, everybody gets this. No, in fact, everybody doesn't get that. When someone says, well, you just don't get it, I always turn that around to, they don't get it because you didn't give it to them. Like, right. Don't push it back over to them. Like, stand in front of a mirror and say, they didn't get that. That means somehow my communication was inferior. And then you can start to pick it apart and say, well, where did it fail? And that's how you can really start to accelerate how you communicate with people when you're sufficiently humble to say, I didn't give it to them. That's why they didn't get it. And that's, that you could get into a whole different discussion on that. But I know you've probably seen this yourself. And as the leader, you get frustrated because it's so obvious to you the thing that has to happen and the direction that you're trying to take the team, that it just frustrates the heck out of people. Like, no, believe me, if you gave them what they needed, they would be pushing you for more. Right. Like, they would be following you so hard. They'd be like, hey, these people are running up on me again. Like, you mentioned John Maxwell somewhere earlier. He's written some of the best stuff on leadership that's out there because he's super practical about it. And, he gives a concept or a principle, and then he lays in the examples of, well, this is what it looks like. So if you saw it, you would know it. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I got it now. He makes that connection. And for these leaders, quote unquote, that are frustrated by their people that don't get it, they need to go back and deconstruct what happened between them originally delivering communication to this lack of understanding part you're at now.
This is one of the most important lessons for me for 2026. So thank you, Greg. This is huge. And I actually don't think I mentioned John Maxwell, but he is worth mentioning.
I was reading him yesterday. I apologize. I could have just
That's okay. Well, I'm a huge fan of Relationships 101, and I definitely listen to a lot of his interviews. And I need to do more read on him because every time I read him, I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. So he's a big, but what's really cool, Greg, about what you shared is it's knowledge that's applicable in a new way for me and some of my favorite readings. And I'll say the E-Myth with Michael Gruber. He talks about how leaders or owners often delegate by abdication. And when I read that, I had to figure out what the heck abdication meant. And so I looked it up and I was like, oh, like you're delegating something that you don't understand and don't know how to do. Of course that's going to go bad. And he said, in the worst case scenario, the person that you delegated to does super, super well, but you keep putting more hats on their heads. And what happens is eventually that person burns out and leaves. And now you end up with procedures, resources, and templates that you don't know how they work. You've got something scaled, and now you've got no way to recover it because you never learned how to do what they did so well. And so it crashes and burns your business. So the best thing you can do is learn how to delegate responsibly, gamify the process of creating the systems. And so I'm looking at your plan and saying this goes perfectly with the E-Myth, because if I put directing people first, but I don't know what I'm directing them on, then it creates two realities that I've gone through in the last couple quarters. One, if they get confused about what the vision was and frustrated about the experience, when I go back and try to teach the plan again, or teach the plan that I thought I had given or clarified, now everybody's skeptical.
Yeah.
And so now it's twice as hard to move the project forward because I failed to honor them with the clarity on the front end. And as visionaries, we are so guilty of having such clear visions that we often do that. Greg, I know we got to wrap up. We're
And
at the top
nobody
of
can
the
keep
hour.
up with visionaries, by the way, Jackson.
But I want to give you the final word on this. So go ahead. Finish that thought too.
You said you're a visionary, right?
Oh yeah.
So the self-awareness part that might be helpful. The supermajority of people cannot keep up with visionaries.
Yeah.
And I know how hard that is, but it's you're living it.
We have to embrace it. Yeah. If we don't embrace it, it's only going to create new consequences in life that we may not want. And so it's a super valuable.
Apologize, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. I was going to say, as we wrap up, I want to give you the last opportunity to speak. And on that thought process, or rather the last golden nugget, Greg, if this was the last time that you had the chance to get into visionaries' ears and to give them a piece of counsel, what would the counsel be?
Right. So this is the thing. So the work I do is I try to instill in people management fundamentals. And most people don't want to hear that. Like, no, I want the secret sauce. I want the hack. Like, I want the shortcut. I'm like, I'm sorry, but there isn't one. You build a building on top of a lousy foundation, in a couple of years, it's going to fall over. So the thing I try to get across to people, particularly people in the visionary space, because they're moving so fast, is management, which as your company scales, you need. Management isn't one thing. It's a skill set. It's a collection of things. And in order for your people to function at the best level they can, you've got to make sure they have this skill set. So when you let's look at sports. You got a football player, soccer for the Americans, who can score goals better than anybody, but plays zero defense and has no assists because he never passes. That's not really a complete player. There's some skills. They don't have a skill set. They have a skill, and a super valuable skill. They don't have a skill set. The best players are described as, well, they're well-rounded. Well, there's a reason for that. They can contribute no matter who's around them. They have a way of contributing. And that's that's the one thing, if I can get across to people, say, no, stop thinking about these surgical strikes. I need a technical skill in coding. Okay. Your coder's probably going to have to talk to some end users. Can they communicate with other people? That would be kind of helpful.
Yep. Not usually, but they need it.
Well, no, if they're looking at your shoes, they're interested. If they're looking at their shoes, they're not interested.
Interesting. Well, good, Greg. I appreciate that.
I worked with a lot of them.
And these management fundamentals and skill sets, Greg's given us some great insight. John Maxwell's got great insight. Michael Gerber's got a great insight. Patrick Lencioni's got great insight. I didn't mention John Whaley, but I wanted to. He's one of my favorite leaders, and he talks about, instead of the silver lining of challenge we have in life, the silver road that life has often granted us. Amazing individual. And these skill sets, these fundamentals. You can reach out to Greg Kaiser on LinkedIn. I'm sure you can find him on Google quite easy as well. You can, of course, get the book on Amazon. My friends, lean into those who that you align with from a mentorship standpoint. Mastermind with them. Find out what they have, how you can implement it. Allow them to see behind the curtains of what's going on when you find somebody who you trust, because I can see and feel Greg's heart in this process. I know that he wants to help people as much as possible. Greg, you've done that for me. Vision Pros, if any of you want to join us on the show, click the button. It says be our guest. Come and join us on the show. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everybody. And Greg, thanks again for blessing my life.
Terrific, Jackson. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision.